This is the first time I ever opened up to anybody. I've kept it bottled up for 20-some years. It's rough. I just wish I could talk about it, hit a light switch, and be done with it. But it's just, that's the light switch don't turn off. There's no explaining how much hate I got for that man. I was 8 years old and I woke my dad up with a snub nose 357. Hammer pulled back, loaded, and he talked me out of it. He talked the gun away from me. I wish I would have pulled that trigger when I was 8 years old. If I would have pulled that trigger when I was 8 years old, none of this would ever happened.
Deputies searched for a body in what they believed was a swampy grave.
I blame myself. Can't stand that bastard. I grew up in a pretty large family. It was 12 of us, 7 boys, 5 girls. I'm the middle child, smack dab in the middle. My father was an ordained minister, and anybody and everybody that wanted a wedding in the community would come to my father. He would marry couples out front in the house. My mom would cook the food, and we're all dressed up, standing out there, while he's performing the service.
Ron, it's a beautiful day for a wedding. God has blessed you.
Thank you.
My father would stand out there when he was performing the weddings, just like any other minister. He'd have his white collar on, then he'd read a couple of quotes out of the Bible. He was real religious and real polite. Everybody adored him, loved him.
You may kiss the bride.
I remember when this photo was taken. I looked happy in it. If you really looked, if you could look beyond them photos, it was, there was no smiles. If I could go back in time, I would tell myself, run. One night, we all went to bed. We had school the following morning. I woke up, I heard a noise on our roof. And me and my brother Matthew looked out the window. And there was this beast. It was all in black and tapping on the windows. It was one of the most scariest moments of my life. Woke up my mom and told her, the devil's outside. He's trying to come in our window, trying to get us.
Window!
What?
A monster!
Okay, I'll look.
We pointed at the window, and when we looked at the window, it was gone.
What's this?
The boys thought they saw something out the window.
My father came in, he told us it was Satan that was trying to get in the house.
That was the devil trying to get in here. He's coming for both of you.
But my father told us, as long as we follow what he says and do what he does, that's not going to harm us. We have not a worry in the world as long as we follow what my father tells us to do.
You disobey me, then the devil has every right to come in here and get you.
So me as a kid, I want this creature to come down out of the sky and snatch me so I can do what my father asked me to do. It came out years later that it was our father looking in the window. My father, he dabbled in cults. Everybody goes to church on Sunday, and we didn't go to church. We didn't go to Sunday schools. He was his own church. One day we're all out in the yard. He walked us over to the rock garden, and there's a statue of Jesus in there. Had his hands out like this. My father had a hatchet, and he swung down at it. My father busted the hands off of Jesus and told us that, God's not going to help you. My father told us, all of us kids, that he was the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end.
I am the only God you will ever know. Now, if you pray to me from now on.
He had all these powers. God speaks through him.
Fear me. Beseech me. Revere me.
And everything he said, everything my father told me, I believed. He's my role model. I love my father. After that incident, everything started getting darker. It was like a whole nother world. That's when things started getting crazy in the house. My father had us all gather in a dining room. There's candles and stuff around, and a pentagram on the table. I see my father coming down the hallway. He had a black cape on. I'm wondering why he's got this cape on.
Grab each other's hands.
He's reading out this black book. And we're all holding hands in the dining room when he's doing this.
Let my knowledge be my path into the darkness. Sacrifice of bone and blood.
And something was on the table. It was covered. Me being a kid, I really didn't understand what was going on, but when he pulled the piece of material, just the shock of fear went through me. He had our family cat, Misty, was right in the center of the pentagram, and Misty was dead. My father held the cat up and slit its throat and drained its blood into this, it was a chalice. And he passed the chalice around to each of us and had us drink the blood.
Blood for blood.
My heart's racing. It feels like I'm gonna get sick. But everything my father said, we did, we pleased him. He turned the lights back on, he threw the cat away, blew all the candles out, and we went on. After that, like nothing ever happened. He told us never talk about it, never speak of it.
Not a word of this will sleep from this house, or a sickening punishment will happen.
Dad, I'm sorry. I was just asking about the...
Shut up!
Just snatches her by the back of her head, slams the door. And all I heard was her screaming and crying, and it was a full-blown beating. When I was younger, my father had rules in the house.
Now this is a house of order. When I tell you something, tattoo it on your heart so you don't forget. Understand? You understand?
We couldn't bring friends over to the house. Don't leave the property. Don't talk about what's going on in the house. He didn't allow us to talk to nobody in school.
You go to school and you come home. No delays.
And my father gave all of his boys a quarter. And he told me, if you catch your sisters talking to anybody, I want you to call me. That was my father's biggest worry. You know, if the girls are talking to somebody, they're talking about what's going on in the house.
This home is sacred. And everything that happens in it is sacred.
We're like my father's eyes when he wasn't watching them. There was always one of us in our classes, one of us passing them in a hallway. One day I saw my sister talking to her teacher, and it was outside of class. I called my father and I told him Sherry was talking to the teacher. And when we got home,
Dad, I'm sorry. I was just asking about my homework.
Shut your mouth. Get up there. I told you never to talk to anyone.
he snatches her up, throws her down the hallway, takes her into his bedroom, slams the door. Then all I heard was her screaming and crying, and you could hear him yelling. It was a full-blown beating. I felt bad. You know, it was my sister in there. We're supposed to protect them. I thought to myself, why'd I call? You know, why didn't I just let it go? I did it out of fear. If I didn't tell my father that they're talking to other people in school, then it's going to be me in that bedroom. I didn't want that. In my household, it was survival of the fittest.
He got all over his face.
Me and my brother Willie were walking down the basement. I mean, that was our hangout. And I heard my sister. We're trying to be quiet. And I looked down, seen my father having sex with Pixie. I see it with my own eyes. And me and Willie, we got scared. And we went back upstairs. And then he came upstairs and he was fixing his pants.
Hi, boys.
And then my sister came up a little while afterwards. From that day forth, my father is constantly having sex with her. There was a lot of incest going on in that house. You know, he's done it to me, and I didn't think it was abnormal, you know, seeing it done to my sister. You know, he'd take us in there and have us perform certain things. How could a man do that to his child? Every time I got abused, I didn't want to live anymore. I prayed to God every day that he'd just take my life. I didn't want to live. As long as I can remember, we always had little dances, you know, listening to the 50s and 60s music. All of us kids in the living room. My mom loved dancing. She loved dancing. There was no drama. There was no beatings. It was like we're in a whole different world. And then just one night, everything's going good. We're having fun. And then Pixie came downstairs. She comes walking in the living room. She has a wedding veil on. And my father announces, that he was going to marry Pixie. She's a young girl. She's 17 years old.
Family, I'm so happy to tell you that I'm marrying Pixie.
It was so quiet you could hear a church mouse fart.
We are gathered here to join in marriage.
My father performed a marriage ceremony, and she's holding his hands and he's holding her hands. And he says the whole wedding spiel, the vows, and had her say some vows.
I vow I will honor and cherish you for all of my life.
My mom was beside herself when they did that. She couldn't look at none of us. She just kept looking at the carpet. She really couldn't step in. If she stepped in, she would just get beat. She was a victim as much as we was. I was so damn confused, it was crazy. I'm thinking, my sister's gonna be my mom. I'm gonna have two moms. I didn't know what to think. I was just a young, ignorant kid.
I will serve you for the rest of my days.
By my powers, we are consecrated in marriage.
But Pixie, she was happy. The most happiest time in her life. She was in love with my father. That's my father. And it's after he, said the vows and everything and put the ring on her finger. He's got the biggest smile on his face. It makes me feel sick. How could a man marry his daughters? Some twisted individual, sick. My father told everybody in the family that Pixie was pregnant by a man that was in the service. And the next thing I know, she's in the hospital having a baby. Then, maybe a year down the line, she was pregnant again. That time it was a guy from school. But we all know where the kids came from. They were our father's kids. And then the following summer, she's pregnant again, and that's when it got serious. The police came over, we watched them walk through the yard, and my stomach drops. It's gonna get bad. It's gonna get real bad. It's Joel. She met him in high school. Joel was a good guy. He was a real good guy. I wish Joel never would have met my sister. If I could reverse time and I could talk to Joel, I would tell Joel to leave. One day I saw my sister pull up and it was her and a guy, and I thought it was kind of odd because no one's allowed at the house.
What's going on?
Hi, Charlie. Joel's my boyfriend.
He told me, he was like, I love your sister. And one day I hope to marry her. And it kind of caught me off guard. I don't know why Joel thought it was his kid.
Pixie, Dad's not...
Dad and Joel are great.
Just want to be a part of this family.
Yeah.
I think Joel was another scheme to cover up my dad having another child with my sister, Pixie.
Good to see you.
She had her first kid, it was like 11th grade, and then she was pregnant again in her senior year. You know, the school started asking questions, and my father told them the same stories he's telling us. He didn't want the truth to get out. One day, me and my brother cut a bicycle tire in half, and we nailed it on each side of my windowsill, and I took a battery and put it in a slingshot, pull it back, and I let it go, and it slung across the fence and hit my neighbor and knocked him down.
Oh, man, he's really hurt. What? Yeah.
And the paramedics showed up. The police came over, we watched them walk through the yard, and my stomach drops. I don't know how my dad talked him out of not arresting me. But then after the police officer left, it was hell to pay.
I told you never to draw attention to our family. You think having the cops show up is some kind of joking matter? You aren't ever gonna forget this again.
And he threw us in a closet like we were luggage. And there was a spray coming up and under the door, and it was Raid. And it started coming into the door, and it started getting hard to breathe. We're in there for hours, it seemed like days. That was one of the most scariest moments of my life. I thought I was gonna die in there. And I don't know if the bug spray or, you know, put me to sleep or if I just went to sleep. But we're in there for one complete night. We started talking about the government's gonna come over here and we're gonna have to fight for our land, protect our family.
Take a weapon.
He started training us how to fight, training us how to kill people, take a man's life with one blow, how to cut a man's throat, how to crush a man's esophagus by punching him. He had us shooting guns. And we became pretty good with the guns, too good. I thought my mission was protect my family, and everybody else is just everybody else. You know, if they came along, I don't care who it was. You know, you come along with a badge, you're coming after my family. You're a dead man. What happened was, my sister, Michelle, talked to social services in school.
Mr. Sexton, my name is Diane. I'm from Child Protective Services.
Told them what was going on, you know, what our father was doing to us. And that's when they ordered my father out of the house.
No, you have a mistake.
Well,
I'm not going anywhere.
we have the police here that's going to escort you out.
You're gonna have to go.
They escorted him off the property and told him he was no longer allowed on the property.
Come on.
He was coming over at the house against their rules.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm sick of this.
I remember it like it was yesterday. He said, I'm done. I'm not going anywhere. I'm tired of them. They're not taking your kids off me anymore. and he ordered me and my brothers to barricade the house.
Go out back and get some wood. We're gonna block up all these windows. Go, now!
He had us board up all the lower windows in the house. And then he made the phone call to the Jackson Police Department, and he's cussing at them, calling them everything in a book, telling them, you know, he's not leaving his property.
You come and try to take me out of here, I will leave a trail of bodies from where I am back to my family.
The Jackson Police Department, they evacuated the whole street, had everything blocked off. The instructions my father gave me was 1 shot, 1 kill. Anything moves outside, anything comes close to the house, shoot it. The Jackson Police Department, they evacuated the whole street, had everything blocked off.
Charles, they make a move towards the house, you take them down.
My father said if there's any authority that even remotely gets on the property, shoot to kill. I'd see things move outside, and I'm thinking it's police officers trying to sneak up on us. The standoff lasted for 2 days, and we were scared. And then he gets a phone call from one of the deputies.
Yes.
And then that's when the deputy showed up at the house. My father told me if he dips his head, pull the trigger and take out the deputy. And if he would have dipped his head, I would have took that deputy's life. But the deputy talked my dad down, like had him come outside and surrender. And that was the biggest sigh of relief, like a movie, a happy ending. It was like a whole different life. We were free. And after my father got bonded out, he returned back to the house. He told us the FBI is looking for him, and then he starts talking about, you know, the war. No one's gonna split his family up.
Very good.
We took those weapons and loaded everything up in the motorhome, and everything just went downhill. We're in the campground. The baby was crying, and it irritated my dad. And he told Pixie, shut the baby up or I'm gonna come back there and shut it up. And she put her hand over its mouth, over Skipper's mouth. And Skipper shut up.
What's going on?
I hear a big scream, and she's screaming over the baby, over Skipper, and Skipper's all blue.
Is he?
He's gone.
And I look at Skipper, and my dad told me that he was gone. There's no help for him.
Put him in that. Do it.
So my sister put him in a duffel bag put his pacifier in. Wow. Give me a second. My sister Pixie put a pacifier in Skipper's mouth and put a rattle on his hand. And my dad ordered me and my brother Willie to bury him. So we took the baby back in the woods. And we dug a hole. And we put Skipper in the ground. Oh, I can't do that. It's what Skipper was buried in. You don't recognize it at all. Yeah, it's embedded in my memory. It's everything that baby wore when I put him into the ground. This child was real innocent. He was brought into just a crazy, evil family. I mean, there's no words. It's just sick, twisted. I don't even want to really look at it. I don't want the memories. Joel was beside himself.
Joel, calm down. It's okay.
How can I be calm? This is my child. I'm not letting you bury him in the dirt in some bag.
He wanted to go dig the baby back up and drop him off at the police station.
They'll be able to help us.
No, the police can't help.
Joel thought Skipper was his son, but he wasn't. He was my father's. My father. He's mad. He's trying to come up with something else just to shut Joel up.
Charles! Willie.
So he says, I got a plan. And we're all wondering, what's his plan? He's going to replace Skipper. My dad told me that he had a plan, to get another baby. He took me and Willie to Ohio, but I still didn't know what was going on. And then he stops right in front of my brother's house. My father performed a marriage for my brother Eddie. Eddie and his wife left years ago. My father told me to knock on the door. Eddie's going to answer it, and you're going to shoot him. And you're going to take his baby, his youngest son.
When I tell you to do something, you do it. Give me a hand, boy.
He wanted me to take my brother's life and take his youngest son to replace Skipper. And I knock on the door. I'm scared, hands sweating, heart's about to come out of my chest. Thank God he didn't answer the door. If my brother would have answered, I would have put a hole in him. I would have took my brother's life. That's how much control he had on us boys. Whatever he said, we'd do. I don't care what it was. So we go back to Florida. No baby in hand. And that's when he started getting real nervous.
You want him to ruin this family?
No, sir.
My father told me and Willie that we got to get rid of Joel. As if not, he was going to go to authorities about Skipper.
Take Joel on a walk.
My father ordered Willie to take Joel out in the woods.
Man, let's go for a walk.
I was supposed to stay at the campground, but I followed him back into the woods. I'm standing behind this tree. I'm hiding, I'm scared to death. And then I heard, man. I heard Joel scream. And that's all he got out was a scream. Willie had the noose around his head, around his neck. My father was standing back and was holding the gun up to my brother. And I told him, finish him or I'm gonna finish you.
Do it!
And Willie's crying, but Willie's doing what Willie was told. And then after Joel was dead, my dad had me go back there and help Willie bury Joel. And that was the end of it. Joel worshiped the ground Pixie walked on. I mean, he loved her to death. He never deserved it. He deserved a happy life. My parents were arrested for abducting us kids, kidnapping, child abuse, child endangerment. I mean, multiple counts of every charge. But no one knew about the deaths of Joel or Skipper. So when I was talking to the state prosecutor, at first, I was scared.
Just tell me what happened.
I don't know if I can do that.
It was like having a bird. This bird's, its whole life is in this cage. And then one day you just let it go.
Little Skipper's dead.
How did that happen?
I told him everything, and Pixie killed the baby. How Willie killed Joel. I told him everything as far back as I can remember. I felt free.
What happened to the baby?
Did you kill that child? What happened to the child?
Did you kill your child?
Did you kill Joel? What happened with Joel? Come on, you can talk to us. What happened? Did you kill him?
My mom got charged with multiple counts of child abuse, fleeing the state of Ohio, aiding a known felon, abduction. I mean, they racked my mom with charges. I've never had anger for my mom. She wasn't an abuser. She did 22 years in prison for absolutely nothing, protecting her kids the best that she could.
Did you know your grandchild was dead?
No, I just found out about all of it today. Did you know any of this was going on?
Did you know your son-in-law was dead?
No, I didn't know about it today.
Who killed the baby?
Who killed the baby?
I don't know! You're gonna have to talk to my son and my daughter. I don't know.
Did they kill the baby?
I don't know. I'm not saying anything else.
It's the first time I've seen Ellen. I don't know why she didn't tell the truth. I mean, she knew the baby was dead. She knew Joel was dead. That don't make any sense. That's something that's gonna bug me probably for the rest of my life. Why did she say that, I don't know why.
Did you tell your daughter to stop the baby from crying, and did your daughter kill that child?
No, I did not tell my daughter to quit making the baby cry because I didn't even know it was crying that night.
Who killed the baby, Eddie?
No one that I know of.
What happened to the baby?
This lying bastard. I've never seen that video. When I first heard his voice, I got nervous for a second. But I got so much anger for that man, I can't stand him. When my parents first got arrested, I'm out there by myself, and my world was lost. I was 18 years old, and I tried to commit suicide, and it didn't happen. And, the gun didn't go off. It was loaded, but it didn't go off. That right there told me that God has something in him.
They say every town has a secret, but in the winter of 1995, the quiet, pine-lined calm of Brookings, Oregon, carried one that would rot beneath the surface for decades. It begins on a night drenched in freezing rain, a night remembered only by the sound of wind scraping across rooftops and the faint echo of a scream swallowed by the storm. No one wanted to believe they heard it. No one wanted to step outside. And no one knew that in that single moment a life had vanished into the kind of darkness only a cold case can preserve, still silent, waiting for the day it decides to breathe again. The voice of the town that night was a police scanner crackling through the static, a bored officer half listening until a call sliced through the monotony. Possible missing person female 23 last seen leaving her workplace at 10:17 p.m. Her name was Emily Carter, a waitress at a roadside diner, a familiar smile to every trucker who stopped for coffee, every local who came in looking for warmth. She was the kind of person no one imagined could simply disappear, yet somehow impossibly, she did. The rainstorm washed away everything footprints, tire marks, the invisible trail only trained eyes could follow. Officers combed the parking lot behind the diner flashlights, drifting over puddles that reflected nothing but darkness. The manager had closed early because the power went out. Emily had walked out alone. She always parked near the back entrance. It made closing easier. But that night, her car door was found unlocked, the keys still in the ignition, her coat draped across the driver's seat, as if she'd simply stepped out for a moment and expected to return. But she never did. Within hours, the story spread through Brookings like a lightning bolt, striking dry timber young woman missing mysterious disappearance, possible abduction. Headlines blared through the community with a mix of fear and fascination. People whispered the phrase that would follow the case for years, cold case in the making, but the police insisted it was too early for that. They launched a frantic search, one that raced the clock and the rain, a search that churned up mud, but uncovered nothing meaningful. Her friends described her as careful, predictable someone who avoided trouble. No enemies, no conflicts, no romantic partner who could be a suspect. Emily lived with her sister, worked long shifts, dreamed of saving money for photography school. She loved the ocean, the cliffs, the fog. She hated driving at night. All of that made her disappearance feel impossible. Yet impossibility didn't matter. The empty car was proof enough. Detectives traced what little they could. Security cameras in 1995 were grainy, barely functional, capturing shadows more than faces. The footage from the diner's lot revealed only blurred shapes moving in and out of darkness. Emily's silhouette, stepping outside a figure in the distance, indistinct, then nothing. The tape cut out as lightning struck nearby, plunging the area into static snow. They interviewed everyone who worked that night. One cook claimed he saw a truck idling behind the trees near the road, something he thought was strange but didn't consider alarming. A regular customer remembered a man sitting alone at the counter, wearing a dark jacket, not talking, barely moving. Another witness mentioned hearing a metallic clatter behind the building, but assumed it was someone taking out trash. Small threads, fragile, easily broken. As days passed with no sign of Emily, the fear in Brookings ripened into dread. Volunteers combed the woods, state police widened the search grid, and drones didn't exist yet to scan aerial footage. Everything depended on boots on the ground and luck, but luck was never on their side. Then, on the fourth day, her name was no longer just a missing persons alert, it became a headline. Oregon woman vanishes without trace. Brookings residents shocked by mysterious disappearance. Cold case fears rise as search enters 72 hours. Reporters swarmed. Cameras pointed at her family's home. Helicopters hovered over thick forests that swallowed sound. Every passing hour felt like a clock winding down, tightening the noose around the town's hope. And then the first rumor surfaced. A hiker claimed he found something near an abandoned logging trail fabric torn on a branch darkened as if soaked through. Police rushed there, but the moment they retrieved it, they realized it wasn't Emily's. Wrong color, wrong texture, wrong size, another dead end. The town began to fracture. Parents kept children indoors. Women avoided walking alone after sunset. Local businesses installed new locks. And in the midst of the rising panic, some residents whispered an older story about a man who once stalked the remote edges of the forest, a man rumored to linger around rest stops a man police never caught. It had no connection to Emily, no evidence, just a ghost story resurfacing because people needed anyone to blame. But detectives followed everything, even the ridiculous. They checked parole lists, questioned drifters, dug into old case files. They pulled over every unfamiliar truck. They investigated Emily's coworkers, even her own family. They interrogated the cook who mentioned the truck behind the trees. They brought in the quiet customer with the dark jacket. They held community meetings. Still nothing. It seemed she had vanished into thin air. The rain that washed away evidence was blamed for everything: the failure of the search grid, the lack of prints, the missing footprints, the absence of tire impressions. But deep down, what terrified investigators wasn't the rain. It was the silence, a complete unnatural silence that smothered the case like a blanket. No ransom call, no communication, no demands, no sightings, no body, just emptiness. Weeks passed. Then months. The trail grew colder than the winter that swallowed her. Headlines shifted from urgent to resigned. Brookings cold case stalls, family seeks answers, community haunted by disappearance. Emily's face stayed pinned on bulletin boards long after hope began to fade. Her picture aged in the sun. The flyers curled at the corners, the ink smudged from weather, from hands touching the paper, from people trying not to forget. But forgetting was easy. Remembering was excruciating. As spring rolled in, the police officially admitted the investigation had reached a standstill. Detectives rotated off the case, leaving behind binders of interviews, grainy photos, and endless reports. Evidence boxes gathered dust in a locked room at the station, each one containing pieces that meant everything and nothing. Emily's family clung to any remaining trace of possibility. Her sister kept her bedroom exactly as it was, refusing to move a single item. Her mother spoke to reporters with trembling hands, demanding the public keep searching. Her father retreated into silence, unable to accept the void. And Brookings adjusted to a strange new reality, a town known not for fishing or tourism, but for a mystery so deep it warped the way people viewed their own streets. Nighttime walks became rare. Teenagers told embellished versions of the story at bonfires. Travelers asked locals about the girl who disappeared in the storm. Time didn't erase the fear, it turned it into folklore. The official cold case designation came 2 years later. It hit the town like a second storm. Reporters returned cameras, flashing again, headlines resurfacing. Oregon cold case remains unsolved. Family demands answers in 1995 disappearance. Case file shows disturbing inconsistencies. But without new leads, the case froze completely. Detectives moved on to fresh crimes cases with tangible evidence, modern surveillance, useful witnesses. Emily's file remained locked untouched, except for the occasional officer who flipped through it on slow nights, hoping something would suddenly make sense. But nothing ever did, not until decades later. Because somewhere buried in the quiet rhythm of the town, in the spaces between routine police calls and ordinary lives, a truth was waiting. A truth carried by someone who had never spoken. A truth that pressed on a conscience for years, festering, tightening, choking. The story of Emily Carter did not vanish. It lived in the guilt of one person, someone who walked among the townspeople, shopped at the same stores, drove the same roads, maybe even offered sympathy to her grieving family. And as the years folded one over another, the burden grew heavier, turning into something impossible to carry. But in 1995, no one knew that. All they saw was a disappearance that broke the heart of a town and left behind a void that stretched into decades. By the end of that first year, Brookings had changed forever. And Emily's story was no longer just a tragedy, it became an echo, a shadow, a cold case etched into the identity of every person who lived there, a memory that refused to die. It would take almost 30 years for the silence to break. And when it finally did, the confession that emerged wouldn't just reopen a file, it would rip open old wounds, ignite old fears, and shake the entire community to its core. Because the truth behind the Oregon 1995 cold case was closer, darker, and more shocking than anyone ever imagined. The years after Emily Carter's disappearance crept forward like fog rolling in from the Pacific, slow, heavy, and impossible to escape. Brookings aged around the wound, but the wound never healed. People stopped mentioning her name out loud, but they still paused every time they walked past the diner where she was last seen. The building changed ownership twice. New signs went up, new paint covered the old peeling walls. But no matter how many renovations were made, everyone knew exactly where she had stood in her final moments, exactly where her shadow had been swallowed by the night. And yet, life continued in that stubborn way small towns insist it must. School buses still rumbled down cracked roads, teenagers still loitered in parking lots, tourists still wandered into souvenir stores, unaware they were standing in a place where a mystery had rooted itself into the soil. But the people who lived there felt it an invisible pressure behind every normal day, a story without an ending, a ghost without a grave. Every anniversary brought reporters back. They descended on the town armed with bright lights and sharper questions, stirring up old emotions like sediment in water. Police chiefs changed, detectives retired, but the same phrases repeated every year. We're still seeking answers. We encourage anyone with information to come forward. No detail is too small. The words became ritual familiar, almost empty. Behind closed doors, however, investigators were not as calm as their press releases suggested. The case had become a quiet humiliation, one of the few disappearances in the region that had left no real trace, no body, no closure. Detectives whispered about it during late-night shifts, flipping through the aging reports. They knew the story too well. A young woman walking into the storm, an unlocked car, a coat left behind, and the overwhelming sense that the truth had been hiding in plain sight all along. But every time they tried to reopen the file, it felt like the case pushed back. Witnesses moved away. Memories faded, evidence degraded. And the tiny crucial details that should have mattered most all seemed to collapse into contradiction. One detective, years later, summarized it in a single, frustrated sentence. It's like trying to reconstruct a house when all you have left is the dust. When the 20-year mark passed, the file grew heavier with the weight of unsaid things. New officers born after Emily disappeared were handed the case as a kind of grim rite of passage. They would study it at make notes circle leads long proven useless. Some stayed obsessed for weeks, a few for months. But eventually, each one gave in to the same reality. The investigation was a labyrinth with no center. Still, the legend lingered. Locals told their own versions of the story, each more dramatic than the last. Some believed she fled voluntarily, escaping a life she never wanted. Others speculated she'd been taken by someone passing through someone who knew how to vanish as easily as she did. A handful whispered darker theories, serial predators, ritualistic crimes, secret relationships. None of it was backed by evidence, but the absence of truth created a vacuum rumors were eager to fill. Yet while the town spun its tales, one person carried the real one. Someone who knew exactly what happened. Someone who kept it buried for decades. Someone who looked at news reports with a tightening throat and avoided eye contact whenever the anniversary coverage aired. Someone who thought the silence would last forever. And it might have, if not for a single unexpected fracture in the routine of an ordinary life. It began with a notice in the mail. A simple letter. Jury duty. A summons that should have been mundane, forgettable, tossed into a drawer with other bureaucratic obligations. But for this individual, this silent witness, or perhaps something far worse, it was the spark that ignited a long-dormant terror. because the thought of walking into a courthouse, of sitting under fluorescent lights, surrounded by badges and uniforms and questions, shook something loose in the recesses of a conscience already stretched thin. That night, they couldn't sleep. Memories clawed their way to the surface, memories they had shoved down for nearly 3 decades. The storm, the diner, the sound of footsteps on wet pavement, the moment when everything slipped out of control, the moment when silence became a cage. They sat at the edge of their bed, staring at the letter, trembling at the idea that maybe fate was circling back, that maybe this was the warning shot. They told themselves it meant nothing. They tried to believe it. But belief is fragile when guilt is corrosive. For the next few days, they avoided mirrors, avoided conversation, avoided sleep. The town that once felt safe now seemed filled with eyes watching, waiting, recognizing something in their expression. And the heavier the fear grew, the more their defenses cracked. At work, coworkers asked if they were all right. They smiled weakly, insisted they were fine. But behind closed doors, the panic escalated. Paranoia seeped into every corner. They imagined seeing Emily's face in the fogged-up window of their car. They heard her voice in the static of their radio. They swore they felt her presence in empty rooms. It wasn't ghosts haunting them, it was memory. And memory, when ignored, becomes a predator of its own. Meanwhile, an entirely different development was unfolding at the local police department. A new detective, recently transferred, took it upon himself to review old cases as part of familiarization with town history. When he opened the Carter file, something struck him immediately. Details he believed had been overlooked or dismissed or misinterpreted. He stayed late that night, poring over interviews, cross-referencing timelines, reanalyzing statements. With a fresh pair of eyes, 2 inconsistencies jumped out, small ones, almost microscopic, but enough to tug at a loose thread. He highlighted them, placed them in a folder, and requested access to archived evidence from the state lab. Most of it had degraded. Some was missing. Some had been tested with outdated methods. But there was one piece, one small item, that could still potentially yield information with modern technology. He put in the request. He didn't yet know this decision would set off a chain reaction. Back in the quiet home of the person carrying the truth, the feeling of inevitable collapse settled heavily in their chest. They walked through the house in the middle of the night, unable to sit still. They opened windows, shut them again, paced between rooms, turned lights on and off. Their thoughts spiraled. What if someone had found something? What if new technology could detect things the old labs couldn't? What if the case reopened? What if someone talked? Fear became a wildfire, and guilt became oxygen. The next morning, they didn't go to work. Instead, they drove aimlessly, letting the winding coastal roads blur past. They stared at the ocean, cold and endless, stretching into a horizon that offered no comfort. They thought about running, leaving the state, disappearing like Emily had. But running was dangerous. Running attracted attention. So they returned home, sat down at their kitchen table, and dug out an old box from the back of their closet. It held relics from a life they had tried to bury: old receipts, a faded photo, a keychain, and tucked beneath the bottom panel, a notebook. Inside it were scribbles, fragments of thoughts written in a shaking hand years ago, confessions never meant to see the light, descriptions of that night, what happened, why it happened, and what they had done afterward. Words so heavy they seemed to sink the ink deeper into the paper. They read the notebook twice, hands trembling. Each sentence felt like a countdown. Then came the moment the silence finally snapped. A knock at the door. Soft, polite, ordinary. But to them it was thunder. They froze, their breath locked. Footsteps echoed from the porch, not police, just a neighbor asking if everything was okay, mentioning they hadn't been seen in a few days. But the fear that surged inside was enough to shove them over the edge, enough to shatter the fragile dam holding back decades of truth. When the neighbor left, they shut the door, collapsed to their knees, and whispered something no one had ever heard from them before. "I can't do this anymore." The words echoed in the empty house. A vow, a surrender, a fracture so deep it would soon split open the entire town. That night, they didn't try to sleep. Instead, they sat in silence, staring at the phone, knowing what they needed to do. Confession isn't born from courage, it's born from fear that becomes unbearable. And in that dark kitchen, fear had finally reached its breaking point. Somewhere across town, the detective reviewing the case received a notification from the state lab testing on the requested item was scheduled. Results could take weeks, maybe longer. He had no idea events outside the department were already accelerating faster than any lab could process, because the truth was ready. And the person carrying it was about to walk straight into the light they'd spent years avoiding. They would soon step into a police station, trembling pale breath, shaking ready to utter the first words that would unravel the entire Oregon 1995 cold case. Words that would ignite chaos, words that would rip open everything, words that would rock the town like an earthquake. The confession was coming, and nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same. The morning the confession began didn't look like the start of anything extraordinary. Brookings woke under a sky the color of steel, low clouds pressing across rooftops like a warning the town didn't yet understand. People shuffled into diners for coffee mechanics, raised garage doors, fishermen loaded their trucks. Everything felt routine, familiar, predictable. But inside one small house on the east edge of town, a different world was unfolding, one full of shaking hands, sleepless eyes, and a decision heavy enough to crush a lifetime. They stood in front of the bathroom mirror, gripping the sink, waiting for their reflection to blink or change or reveal some easier path. But the mirror reflected only the truth, a face drawn tight with fear, hair unwashed, eyelids swollen from nights spent fighting memory. The guilt that had lingered like a shadow for decades now pressed so hard against their chest it felt like they were drowning in the shallow air. Their phone sat on the counter. A single number was highlighted on the screen, the non-emergency line for the Brookings Police Department. Their thumb hovered above the call icon. They'd rehearsed what to say. They'd tried to form the words, but each attempt choked itself out before leaving their throat. The thought of speaking felt unbearable, but the thought of staying silent felt worse. They closed their eyes, counted to 3, pressed call. The ring sounded like a heartbeat amplified through a tunnel. Once, twice. Then a click. Brookings Police Department. How can I assist you? But they couldn't respond. Their breath caught. Not yet. They hung up. The silence afterwards was suffocating. They sank to the floor, knees pulled to their chest, pulse racing like a trapped animal. But the wheels were already turning. They knew it. The attempt, however small, had been irreversible. They couldn't retreat. Not anymore. An hour later, they left the house. Dressed in the only clean shirt they could find, jacket zipped, keys shaking in their hand, the car engine turning over like it sensed their desperation. And then they drove not fast, not slow, just steady each mile, bringing them closer to something they feared more than anything telling the truth. The police station looked exactly as it had decades earlier. A squat brick building, 2 flags flapping in the coastal wind, an entrance shielded by glass panels that weren't as clean as they should have been. Officers went in and out, paperwork under their arms, radios crackling with unimportant noise. When they parked and stepped out, the ground seemed to tilt slightly, just enough to make their legs unsteady. The air felt colder, their breath fogged, their heart pounded so violently they could swear people could hear it. Still they walked forward. One step, another, the door handle cold under their fingers. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A receptionist looked up, offering a polite but distracted greeting. They approached the desk, mouth dry, words tangled in their throat. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked. For a moment, silence threatened to swallow them again, but then, barely audible, they spoke. I need to talk to someone about something that happened a long time ago." What kind of something, the receptionist asked, reaching for a form. Their voice cracked. "A missing person." The receptionist paused. "Name?" They swallowed hard. "Emily Carter." Everything around them froze. The receptionist blinked, processing the name the entire town had learned to treat with a kind of quiet reverence. The missing girl, the storm, the unsolved cold case, the wound that never scarred. "Oh!" The receptionist breathed, her tone suddenly careful. "One moment." She picked up the phone, murmured something urgent, and within minutes, footsteps echoed from down the hallway. The new detective, the one who had just begun re-examining the case, appeared in the doorway. Tall, sharp-eyed, alert. He approached, slowly studying the trembling figure in front of him. "I'm Detective Hayes," he said calmly. Why don't you come with me? They nodded weakly, following him down a narrow hallway that seemed to stretch on forever. Every step amplified their fear. Every footstep sounded like accusation. When they entered a small interview room, the walls felt closer than they should have been. The door clicked shut. Detective Hayes offered a seat. They sat hands gripping the chair's edge. "You said you're here about Emily Carter," he said gently. "Tell me what you know." A beat of silence. Then another. The sound of their breathing filled the room, shallow, uneven. Finally, they whispered it. "I was there." Hayes froze, not outwardly, but in that subtle shift trained investigators make when the impossible suddenly becomes possible. "You were there," he repeated carefully. "Not the whole time, but that night, the night she disappeared. I saw something. I heard something. I should have come forward. I didn't." Hayes leaned in slightly, eyes narrowing. "What did you see?" But the words stalled again. The confession trembled at the edge of release, not yet ready to spill. Their throat tightened, eyes watering, nerves fraying with every breath. "I didn't mean for anything to happen," they whispered, voice breaking. "I swear I didn't mean it. It wasn't supposed to." They looked down, shaking violently. "I can't do this. I can't breathe." Hayes softened his tone. "You're doing fine. Just tell me what you came here to say." But before they could answer, another officer knocked on the door. Urgent. Hayes excused himself for a moment. When he stepped outside, the other officer whispered quickly, holding a slip of paper. It was the lab notification. The evidence item he submitted, the one piece of physical material that might still hold secrets, had completed preliminary processing. The lab wanted him to confirm whether they should proceed with deeper testing. Hayes pocketed the slip and returned to the room. But something had changed. The person sitting at the table was now staring at the door, eyes wide, breath rapid, as if they'd realized what this timing meant, as if they could feel the walls closing in. Hayes resumed his seat. "You okay?" he asked gently. They shook their head. "What's happening?" they whispered. Did something come in? Did you find something?" Hayes didn't answer directly. "We're talking about you right now. You said you were there that night. I need you to tell me what you witnessed." Their face went pale. Witness. The word struck them like a blow. Witness implied observation, but what they carried wasn't observation, it was action, a truth far heavier than simply seeing. Their hands trembled uncontrollably. "I made a mistake," they whispered. "A mistake that ruined everything. I never wanted her to—" Hayes leaned forward, voice low. "Are you saying you had contact with Emily that night?" They nodded slowly, tears pooling. "Did you know her?" Hayes pressed. A shake of the head. "No, not really. Not personally. I'd seen her at the diner. Everyone had. She was nice. She always smiled. I didn't want to bother her, but that night, it happened so fast." Hayes watched them carefully. "What happened?" Their breath hitched. "I tried to help," they whispered. "But it looked wrong. It looked so wrong. And when she panicked, I panicked. I grabbed her arm. I told her I didn't mean anything bad. I told her I'd let her go. But she slipped. She fell. She hit the pavement. Hard. And then she wasn't moving." Hayes felt the room tighten around him. "Are you saying she was injured?" They nodded, sobbing now. "I checked her pulse. I thought she was gone. I thought I killed her. I freaked out. I dragged her into the truck. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I was stupid. I kept telling myself I didn't mean it. I just didn't want her to think I was dangerous." Hayes forced himself to stay steady. "Where did you take her?" Their voice collapsed into a whisper so faint it barely existed. "The old logging road. The one near the West Ridge. I didn't bury her. I just left her. I was terrified. I drove home and pretended nothing happened, but I never slept again. I've seen her face every day for almost 30 years. Hayes remained silent, letting the weight settle. But the trembling figure continued. "That's not all. Because when I went back the next morning, she was gone." Hayes's breath caught. "Gone," he repeated. They nodded. "There was blood on the ground, but her body was gone. Someone else was there before me. Someone took her. Someone finished what I thought I'd done." The room fell into a chilling stillness. A second person, a second presence, someone who had stayed invisible for decades. Hayes exhaled slowly, pulse rising. This wasn't a confession. This was a collision of two truths, one of guilt and one of terror. Someone else had been there that night. Someone who never came forward. Someone who might have been the real killer. And they were still out there. Detective Hayes felt the energy in the room shift, an almost physical snap in the air as the trembling figure across from him uttered those final words, "Someone took her. Someone finished what I thought I'd done." For a moment, the fluorescent lights hummed louder. The walls seemed to close in, and even the steady tick of the clock sounded like a countdown descending faster than anyone could control. Hayes leaned back slightly, not because he doubted what he heard, but because the statement detonated the cold case in his mind like a delayed explosion. Two people, two timelines, two sets of actions that had gone unconnected for nearly 30 years. One accidental injury, and another unknown presence lurking in the storm's shadows. He felt his pulse sharpen. "Let me be clear," Hayes said slowly. "You're saying you left the scene thinking she was dead, but when you returned, someone else had already found her?" They nodded eyes, hollow skin nearly gray under the harsh lights. "Yes, I swear to you. I didn't touch her again. I didn't move her. I just wanted to see if I was wrong. If she was still there. But when I came back, she wasn't." And the blood Hayes pressed. "Still on the ground. I saw the outline where she'd been lying, but her body was gone. Someone else got there before me." A tremor moved through them so deep it tightened their whole frame. "I heard something," they whispered. Branches cracking, footsteps. I didn't see the person, but they were there, hiding, watching. I felt it. I felt them, and I ran back to my truck. Outside the interview room, the hallway suddenly felt colder. A gust of wind pressed against the station windows. The world seemed to hold its breath. Hayes let the silence sit for a moment, letting the confession settle into its full shape. It wasn't a killer's confession. It was something else, guilt twisted by time fused with fear. But what disturbed him more than the accidental fall, more than the panicked decision to move the body, more than the decades of silence, was the presence of the unknown person, the second shadow. The one who stepped into the storm that night and made a choice that buried the truth for almost 30 years. Hayes brought his voice down to a whisper. "Did you tell anyone?" They shook their head violently. "No, I thought everyone would think I killed her, and maybe I did. Maybe she was already gone. I don't know. I've never known. That's the part that's been eating me alive." Hayes swallowed, realizing the gravity of what he was hearing. "You made a mistake," he said carefully. "A terrible one. But what you're describing now, this second person, this changes everything." Their eyes flickered with terror. "You believe me?" Hayes didn't blink. "I believe you saw someone else." They exhaled shakily, shoulders sinking under the weight of decades. "But I need more," Hayes continued. "I need every detail, every sound, every movement, every memory, even if it feels uncertain." They wiped their face with trembling hands. "I don't remember everything. I've replayed it so many times, it's all blurred together. Start with what you do remember." Their breath wavered, but they tried. "I parked my truck behind the trees, near the access path. I didn't want to be seen. I was stupid, reckless. I shouldn't have been there. I saw her leaving the diner. She looked tired. She walked fast. She held her coat tight against the rain." A beat of guilt cracked through their voice. "I approached her too quickly. I startled her. She slipped when she backed away. She fell." The moment her head hit the ground, everything changed. Hayes nodded for them to continue. "I was panicking. I didn't know what to do. It felt like the storm was screaming at me. I lifted her. She was limp. I tried talking to her, but she didn't respond. My mind, it just shut down. I dragged her to the truck. I thought I could take her somewhere for help, but then I got scared. I drove. I don't even remember the road. I was shaking too hard." Another deep shaking breath. "When I reached the old logging road, I stopped. I opened the door. I checked her again. Still nothing. I told myself I'd call later. I told myself I'd figure something out in the morning, but when I came back..." Their voice broke. "She wasn't there." Hayes leaned forward. "What exactly did you see at the scene when you returned?" Their eyes unfocused, searching the past. "The ground was disturbed, not just where I left her. Further into the tree line, like someone dragged something heavy. The trail wasn't clear. Rain blurred a lot of it, but there was movement. Definite movement. And the footsteps you heard, they were slow, too slow. It felt like whoever was there wanted me to know they were watching, like they were waiting for me to make a sound." Hayes studied them carefully. "You're sure it wasn't just an animal?" They shook their head immediately. "No, not an animal. Heavy, intentional, human. A chill crept up Hayes's neck. Did you ever go back again after that second time? No, I couldn't. I thought if I left it alone, if I never said anything, maybe it would stay buried. But it didn't. I've seen her face every night. I can't escape it. Their voice cracked completely. It's like she's still there, calling for someone to tell the truth. The room fell into a suffocating quiet. This wasn't just a confession, it was a reawakening of a nightmare. Hayes stood pacing slowly, the gears in his mind turning rapidly. He needed to check the site. He needed to examine the evidence the lab was processing. He needed to cross-reference the timeline. But most of all, he needed to figure out who the second person could have been. Because if someone else retrieved Emily's body, if someone else was hiding in the trees, if someone else had been watching, then that person had stayed silent for almost 3 decades. Hayes turned back to the trembling figure. Do you remember anything else? Anything unusual on the road? Any car headlights? Any noise? They hesitated, then nodded weakly. There was something they whispered, a sound, right before I ran. What sound? It wasn't footsteps, not the ones near me. It was a voice. Hayes stilled. A voice he repeated. Far away, but angry, muffled by the storm. Like someone talking to themselves or arguing with someone. I couldn't understand the words. Hayes felt a shiver run down his spine. You're telling me there were 2 people out there, you and someone else, talking to someone? I don't know, they choked out. Maybe. All I know is I wasn't alone. Hayes inhaled deeply. All right, I'm going to need you to stay here. I'm going to step outside for a moment. We're not done. They nodded, defeated. Hayes left the room, closing the door more carefully than usual. The hallway felt colder. His shoes echoed against the floor. Officers looked up as he passed, sensing something heavier than a typical interview. He walked straight into his office, shut the door, and locked it. The evidence slip the lab had sent earlier sat on his desk. He unfolded it, slowly, reading it again. The item tested had been a fragment of fabric found near the diner, something dismissed decades ago as unrelated. But modern analysis revealed something old investigators missed entirely. A trace, a smear, a partial profile. Not from Emily, not from the confessor. From someone else. Someone who had touched the fabric the night she vanished. Someone still unidentified. Hayes sank into his chair. Breath slow, mind racing. The confession didn't solve the case. It cracked it open. And through that crack, a darker truth was beginning to leak, something older, deeper, and far more sinister than a panicked accident. Someone else had taken Emily Carter from the logging road. Someone who had waited for nearly 30 years. Someone who was still out there. And for the first time in decades, Hayes felt the ground shift under Brookings, not with resolution, but with the warning tremor of what was coming next. Detective Hayes stepped back into the corridor. The evidence slip still burning in his palm, like a warning no one else could feel. The station hummed with the ordinary rhythm of a Tuesday morning phones, ringing keyboards, clattering officers discussing routine domestic disputes. Yet everything felt distorted, muffled, as if the world had become quieter just to make space for the truth unfolding behind one locked door. He walked toward the operations board where old case files were pinned like silent ghosts. Emily Carter's file sat squarely in the center yellowed edges, curling a decade-old photo taped to the corner. Her eyes stared outward, soft and hopeful, unaware of the storm that would swallow her whole. Hayes studied the board, tracing mental lines between interviews, timelines, sightings, and dead ends that might no longer be dead. Pieces that never fit were now starting to shift. He turned and walked back toward the interview room, but before he entered, he paused, hand resting on the doorknob. Something inside told him the next words exchanged in that room would change the direction of the case permanently, either clarifying the truth or smearing it even further. He pushed the door open. The confessor sat where he left them, head down, hands clasped, body sinking into the chair as if gravity had doubled. They looked smaller, almost fragile, a person hollowed by their own memories. Hayes returned to the seat across from them. "There's something I need to ask you again," he said quietly. Their eyes lifted red and swollen. "When you returned to the scene and she was gone? Are you absolutely certain she wasn't conscious when you left her?" A long pause, then a whisper. "I don't know. I thought she was dead. But I've thought about it every day for years. What if I was wrong? What if she woke up and stumbled away? and someone else found her before I did. Hayes leaned in. Do you remember any movement from her after the fall? Anything at all? They shook their head fingers, twisting painfully together. No, she didn't move. She didn't make a sound. Hayes nodded, absorbing the uncertainty. What about the voice you said you heard, the one in the woods? Could you tell if it was male or female? Their face twisted as they fought to retrieve the memory. Male, I think, deep. But the storm, it covered everything. It could have been closer than I realized, or further. I don't know. Hayes pressed. Did it sound angry because of you, or because of something else? I can't tell. It didn't feel like it was directed at me. It felt like someone was arguing with themselves, with someone else, with something. The room fell quiet again. Hayes exhaled slowly. I need you to understand something, he said, voice steady. This doesn't end here. Your part in this, your involvement, it matters. But if someone else was there, someone who moved her body, someone whose DNA might be on the evidence we're processing, then this case is about more than your mistake. Terror rippled across their face. You found something, they whispered. Hayes didn't answer directly. What I found is a direction, for the first time in decades. Their lips trembled. What happens to me now? Hayes didn't sugarcoat it. You're staying here. You're not under arrest at this moment, but you're not free to leave. They nodded, defeated. Hayes stood leaving the room once more. He needed air. He stepped outside into the parking lot, inhaling the cold coastal wind. The sky had darkened, further clouds rolling in with a slow menace. It was the kind of weather that mirrored 1995, the storm, the panic, the disappearance. He could almost hear distant thunder, even though none had yet struck. He walked to his car, retrieved the original case binder, and returned inside. He carried it to the forensic alcove where an aging evidence board hung beneath humming bulbs. He pinned the new lab slip next to the old inventory list and stepped back, studying it like a chessboard. The fragment of fabric dismissed back then was recovered from a bush near the diner's rear wall. It had been logged as miscellaneous textile debris, something that might have brushed off a passerby. But now, under modern testing, it wasn't miscellaneous at all. It held a partial male profile, unidentified, not matching the confessor, not matching Emily. Hayes felt a pulse of adrenaline. The case had always hinted at someone else being there that night, someone investigators could never pinpoint. But if this DNA matched someone in the system, someone with a criminal history, someone local, someone transient, it could break everything open. Or it could point to a ghost, someone who slipped through records untraceable. Footsteps approached behind him. Officer Lyle, a younger patrolman, stopped beside him. Is that about the Carter case? Lyle asked cautiously. Hayes didn't turn. Yes, Lyle swallowed. I was in elementary school when she disappeared. My mom still talks about it. Says it changed the whole town. It did, Hayes replied, and it's about to change again. Lyle hesitated, then lowered his voice. Is it true someone's confessing? Hayes gave a non-committal answer. Someone's talking. Lyle nodded and left. Hayes closed the binder and headed back to the interview room once more. He opened the door quietly, but the confessor looked up immediately, sensing his return like a guilty conscience sensing judgment. We're going back to the logging road, Hayes said. Their eyes widened in alarm. No, please. You're not going. I am. But I need you to describe the exact spot, everything you can remember. Their breathing quickened. It's been almost 30 years. Memory does strange things, Hayes said, but details stay, even when we think they've faded. They closed their eyes, searching the dark corners of their mind. There's a bend in the road, they whispered. Before the western ridge, 2 fallen trees, 1 on each side. There's a turnoff, the kind that's easy to miss unless you know it's there. I took that turnoff, drove maybe 30 yards, maybe 40. There's a stump, a big one, moss-covered. That's where I stopped. Hayes wrote it down quickly. Anything else to help identify the place? A metal sign they added shakily, half buried. Something about old timber rights. I remember hitting it with my foot when I walked back to the truck. Hayes circled the detail. Metal sign, moss stump, fallen trees, west ridge, hidden turnoff. It was enough. As he stood to leave, they spoke again softly, desperately. Do you think she really died when she fell? Or do you think the other person? Hayes didn't answer. Because the truth was, he didn't know. No one knew. And now, for the first time in decades, he was afraid the answer would be worse than anyone imagined. Hayes checked out a vehicle, grabbed flag markers, evidence bags, a camera, and a shovel just in case. As he stepped outside, the air felt charged. Rain threatened. Wind sliced across the lot. It was as if the town itself sensed something stirring beneath the surface. He drove toward the logging road, passing familiar stretches of highway that now felt haunted. Pines towered overhead, bending slightly in the wind branches, whispering secrets that had stayed hidden too long. Hayes turned down the old access road gravel, crunching beneath the tires. Memories he didn't own seemed to drift from the trees, the storm, the confusion, the panic. The road narrowed. The forest thickened. And then he saw it. 2 fallen trees, left and right, just as described. He slowed the car, scanning the tree line. There, barely visible, a narrow turnoff overgrown with brush. He parked at the entrance, stepped out, and pushed deeper into the woods. The air smelled like wet earth and old secrets. The light dimmed the further he went, swallowed by towering evergreens. 30 yards in, he found the moss-covered stump. And beside it, buried under ferns and soil, something glinted faintly. Hayes knelt, clearing away the debris. A metal sign, rust-eaten, bent, exactly where the confessor said. His pulse sped up. The spot was real, the memory accurate. And now the ground beneath him was no longer just dirt, it was possible evidence. He took a deep breath, pulled on gloves, and swept the forest floor with slow, deliberate precision. The earth was disturbed. Not recently, but not untouched. Hayes swallowed hard. Someone had been here after the confessor left. Someone had moved something heavy. Someone had covered their tracks, but not completely. And as Hayes pressed deeper into the thicket, he found the first fragment of a truth no one in Brookings was ready to face. A long, narrow depression in the soil, not human-shaped, but long enough to hold a body. The indentation pointed deeper into the forest, forming a subtle drag path nearly swallowed by years of growth. Hayes followed it, heart-pounding. The trail bent sharply around a cluster of dense underbrush, and there caught on a jutting branch was something small. Fabric, faded, torn, old. His breath caught. The color matched Emily's uniform blouse from the diner. Hayes froze in place. If the fabric was real, if it belonged to Emily, then someone had dragged her body away from the stump. Someone who wasn't the confessor. Someone who had been hiding in the storm. Someone who had watched. Someone who had taken her. His flashlight flickered, the beam shaking as his hand trembled. A cold realization slithered into his mind. The confessor wasn't the killer. The killer had never been found. And the killer might still remember exactly where Emily Carter was taken. The forest felt alive as Detective Hayes stood frozen beside the torn scrap of fabric, the dim beam of his flashlight trembling across the moss and shadows. Wind threaded through the branches above him, low and cold, carrying a whispering hum that made the hairs at the back of his neck rise. There was a chill here, something old, something patient, something that had been waiting too long beneath the pines. Hayes could feel it in the soil, in the weight of the air, in the way the forest seemed to press in around him. He crouched and carefully lifted the fabric with gloved fingers. The texture was brittle with age, threadbare as if time had been gnawing at it inch by inch. But the color, faded blue with a single stripe, was unmistakable. It matched the uniform Emily had been wearing the night she disappeared. It matched the photo in the case file that had haunted Brookings for decades. Hayes swallowed hard, feeling the gravity of the moment settle over him like a shroud. She had been here, dragged, taken, moved. And whoever moved her had left just enough behind to suggest a direction without revealing their full path, as if the storm of 1995 had done them the favor of erasing the rest. He stood and shined his flashlight deeper into the trees. The narrow drag line he'd followed began to thin, swallowed by 28 years of undergrowth, but there was still a faint impression barely visible, but present, leading away from the stump. Hayes followed it, moving slowly, methodically, each step feeling heavier than the last. Branches snapped underfoot, echoing like static in the stillness. The deeper he walked, the more oppressive the forest became. It wasn't just the trees, it was the silence, thick, suffocating, almost unnatural. Even the birds seemed absent, even the insects held back. It was as if this part of the woods remembered what happened here and wanted no part of it. After nearly 50 yards, the impression vanished altogether. Hayes stopped. His flashlight revealed nothing but a dense wall of evergreen trunks and tangled brush. The trail was gone. Whoever had taken Emily from the stump vanished with her into the darkness. Hayes listened, really listened, but there was nothing. No rustle of small animals, no wind low enough to make branches creak, just the distant rhythmic pounding of his own heart. He exhaled slowly. He needed to widen the search radius. He needed a full forensic team. He needed daylight. But time was important in a different way now. Not because Emily could be saved, but because the person who stole her body might still be alive. Someone who had never come forward. Someone who might panic at the news of new evidence. Someone who could try to destroy old traces or silence anyone who knew anything. Hayes turned and retraced his steps, careful not to disturb the area further. When he reached the stump again, he marked the site with flags, photographed everything, and bagged the fabric. Then, with one last look at the dark trail vanishing into the woods, he headed back to the car. On the drive to the station, storm clouds gathered overhead, thick and heavy. The air buzzed with that static tension nature holds right before the sky cracks open. Hayes felt it inside him, too, a pressure building, coiling, waiting to unspool. He needed to update the confessor. But more than that, he needed to understand who else might have been on that logging road in 1995. When Hayes returned to the station, he found the confessor still in the interview room, sitting exactly as before. He had lowered shoulders, hunched hands, clasped in a locked grip. They didn't look up when Hayes entered. He sat across from them, placing the evidence bag on the table, the scrap of fabric barely visible inside. Their eyes flickered toward it, then widened in horror. What is that?" they asked, voice cracking. "Something found near the logging road," Hayes replied. "Something that belonged to Emily." Their breathing quickened. "You found something after all this time?" "Yes." Silence stretched between them, heavy, suffocating. "Does that mean she was dragged away?" they whispered. "It means someone touched her after you left," Hayes said calmly. "It confirms your story. Someone else was out there." Tears welled in their eyes. I told you I felt someone watching me." Hayes leaned forward. "We need to talk about who that someone could have been." Fear twisted across their face. "I don't know. I swear I don't know." "Think back." Hayes pressed gently. "Anyone you knew who spent time in the woods. Anyone with a truck. Anyone who disappeared suddenly after that night." They shook their head. "I didn't know many people. I stuck to myself. I wasn't social. I barely talked to anyone. I wouldn't know who else might have been out there." Hayes narrowed his eyes. "What about the voice you heard? Try to describe it." "Anything." Accent tone. Their face tensed. It sounded angry, rough, like someone arguing with themselves or yelling at someone who wasn't responding. "Could it have been directed at Emily?" Hayes asked quietly. Their hands trembled harder. "Maybe. I don't know. I ran before I saw anything." Hayes sat back, considering every possibility. The confessor had no reason to lie about the second person. Their panic, their trembling, their decades of silence, none of it pointed to deception. If anything, their guilt had consumed them to the point they couldn't hide the truth if they tried. Hayes sensed it. Their remorse wasn't engineered. It was real, and it was destroying them. Hayes spoke again. "Someone in town might know more. Someone who lived near the woods, someone with a history of violence. Someone who worked odd hours." "How are you going to find them?" they asked, voice trembling. Hayes lifted the evidence bag. "If this profile matches someone in the system, we'll know." Their throat tightened. "And if it doesn't?" Hayes exhaled deeply. "Then the person who took Emily has been walking free for nearly 30 years. A shiver passed through the confessor. Hayes stood. "I'm ordering a full search of the West Ridge. Until we know more, you stay here." They nodded, tears slipping down their cheeks. Hayes exited the room and found Lyle waiting near the doorway. "Detective Lyle said the chief wants an update." "He'll get one," Hayes muttered. "But first we're going back into the woods. You're coming with me. Bring 2 others. Gloves, markers, lights, everything." Lyle blinked. "So it's real. You found something." Hayes met his eyes. "I found the one thing we've never had in this case direction." Within 20 minutes, Hayes, Lyle, and 2 additional officers were loaded into 2 SUVs and headed toward the West Ridge. Rain began to fall soft at first, then heavier pattering across windshields, like impatient fingers tapping a message no one wanted to decipher. The forest was different, now darker, more hostile. The storm was building quickly, the sky bruising with deep purples and grays, but Hayes pushed forward headlights cutting across the gravel road as the team moved in. When they reached the turnoff, Hayes gestured for the others to stay quiet. The forest was louder now, wind pushing through the treetops with a restless hiss, but under that, Hayes listened. Something felt wrong. Not the fear of the place, not the memory of the sight. Something new, fresh. Hayes raised a hand stop. Lyle froze. The officers froze. Hayes listened again. A branch snapped deeper inside the woods. Not from the wind, not from an animal. Heavy, deliberate, human. Hayes signaled silently. The team moved forward, flashlights' low beams sweeping through the underbrush. Rain intensified, soaking through jackets, dripping into eyes, making visibility harder. Hayes kept his flashlight steady, scanning for movement. Another crack sounded closer. Hayes tightened his jaw. "Someone's here," he whispered. They moved in formation, stepping carefully, avoiding noise. Hayes reached the stump, first stopping beside the flag markers he'd planted earlier. The indentation in the soil remained undisturbed, but the fabric scrap was no longer the only thing out of place. Something else lay on the ground. Fresh footprints, men's boots, not old, not decades old, hours old at most. Lyle leaned close, whispering sharply. "Detective, someone beat us here." Hayes didn't answer. The footprints led away from the stump and angled deeper into the woods toward the area where the dragline had vanished earlier. Hayes followed the boots with his eyes until the path dissolved into shadow. Then something caught his flashlight beam. A flash of white, something wedged between two roots. Hayes knelt, clearing the mud. It wasn't fabric this time. It was bone. Small, delicate, weathered. Hayes lifted it toward the beam. And as he did, a voice echoed through the woods, not from his team, not from the road, but from somewhere far ahead, hidden in the darkness. A voice low, rough, muttering violently under the pounding rain. Exactly like the confessor had described. Hayes rose slowly, pulse spiking, and whispered to his team, "We're not alone." Rain hammered the treetops in a relentless rhythm as Detective Hayes froze, the pale sliver of bone still cradled in his gloved hand. The voice drifting between the trees wasn't loud, just a low, feverish muttering swallowed by the storm, but it carried a weight that split the night open. It was the exact tone the confessor described, the same cadence, the same eerie sense of someone arguing with themselves in a place no one should be. Hayes lifted his head, eyes narrowing as he scanned the blackened forest. Lyle and the two officers tightened their formation, weapons drawn, lights raised. Every sound seemed amplified by the tension raindrops tapping on branches, wind dragging through needles, distant thunder building like a held breath, about to break. Then the voice came again. Not a yell, not a call, a mutter, ragged, uneven, close enough to feel far enough to hide. Hayes whispered, flashlights low, "Move quiet." The officers obeyed. They stepped carefully along the wet soil, following the fresh boot prints that cut through yesterday's mud like signatures left by someone who had no reason to hide their presence until now. The tracks wove between trees, dipping beneath low branches, always leading deeper, deeper into the heart of the storm-dark woods. The muttering stopped. Hayes froze, hand raised. Silence. The woods were dead still for a moment, as if even nature sensed the presence hiding among the trees. Then, a snap, a breath, a whisper, just ahead. Hayes gestured for Lyle to circle left. The other officers moved right. Hayes advanced alone, boots sinking into soft ground rain, sliding cold down his neck. His flashlight barely cut through the darkness. When he stepped past a cluster of pines, he saw it. A shape, a figure hunched beneath a large cedar barely visible under the storm's veil, shoulders curled inward, head bowed, clothes soaked to the bone. The person rocked slightly, as if muttering into cupped hands. Hayes lifted his light a fraction, careful not to reveal his position. The man's face was hidden, but his outline was unmistakable. An older man, thin, motion tight and jittery like nerves frayed long ago. Something about him radiated a strange feral tension, an energy that didn't match the calm of the surrounding darkness. Hayes exhaled slowly and stepped forward. "Sir," he called out, voice level measured. "This is the Brookings Police Department. I need you to show your hands." The figure didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't turn, just kept rocking gently. Hayes tried again, louder. "Sir, hands where I can see them." "Nothing." Lyle moved in from the left, his light slicing across the forest floor. The beam hit the man's shoulder, illuminating a patch of threadbare fabric clinging to wet skin. Suddenly, the rocking stopped. The man's head twitched not fully, turning just a slight shift to tilt toward the source of the light. Hayes felt a pulse of cold run down his spine. The man whispered something, too soft to understand. Hayes stepped closer. "What did you say?" he asked. The man's voice cracked like dry wood. "Not mine. Not mine. Didn't take her. No, no, no." Hayes stiffened. This man wasn't just wandering the woods. He was repeating something. Something old. Something rehearsed through years of isolation. Hayes swallowed and moved slowly, methodically, not wanting to spook him. "Sir, I need you to turn around." The man didn't move. "Hands up," Hayes said firmly. Still nothing. The man's shoulders trembled as he whispered again, voice shaking with a strange broken rhythm. "She wasn't alone. She woke up. She screamed. I didn't touch her. I didn't touch her." Hayes felt the forest tilt around him. Emily woke up. Someone else found her. Someone she screamed at. Hayes's heartbeat thundered in his ears. "Sir," he said steadily, "I'm not asking again. Turn around." The man flinched slightly at the firmness of the command. Slowly, achingly slowly, he lifted his hands. They rose in small trembling increments. Fingers, thin nails, cracked skin, pale and wrinkled from exposure. He began to turn. Rain streaked across his face first, thin, weathered, eyes glassy and unfocused, lips trembling with words he couldn't hold back. He looked like someone who hadn't slept a full night in years, someone who had been living on adrenaline and fear, someone who had been hiding from a truth that refused to let him go. Lyle's voice cracked. "Detective, look." Hayes shifted his beam. On the man's coat, barely visible beneath the grime and rain, were small patches of fibers. Blue fibers. A faint stripe. Almost the same shade as the scrap Hayes found earlier. The forest held its breath. Hayes took in the man's trembling frame. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. The man didn't answer. Instead, he blinked slowly, water dripping from his lashes, and whispered, "You found the place, finally." Hayes felt the air punch out of his lungs. The man went still. Stiller than the trees, stiller than the storm. Stiller than anything human should be. "You're the one who took her," Hayes said softly. The man's face twisted. Not with guilt, something far stranger, something hollow. "I didn't take her," he whispered. "I tried to save her." The officers stiffened. "What do you mean?" Hayes asked. The man shivered, arms still raised, voice cracking under the rain. "She was lying there. She was bleeding. I heard her breathing. I thought she'd die. I picked her up. I tried. His voice fractured into a whimper. "But she screamed when she woke. She ran into the trees. I tried to follow. She kept running. She disappeared in the storm." Hayes's pulse pounded. This changed everything. "You never touched her after that?" Hayes asked. "I never found her," the man whispered. "She vanished. Like the forest swallowed her." Hayes's eyes narrowed. "Why didn't you go to the police?" The man's lips trembled as he took a breath sharp enough to hurt. "Would you if you were me?" Hayes studied him, clothes, worn boots, cracked face, unshaven hair, matted hands, shaking uncontrollably. He didn't look like someone who'd been living a normal life. He looked like someone who'd been hiding in the woods for years. Someone isolated. Someone unstable. But then Hayes saw something else. The boots. The same tread pattern as the fresh prints near the stump. The man had been following the drag route too, recently. "Why were you out here tonight?" Hayes demanded. The man's eyes unfocused until now suddenly sharpened just slightly. "To stop you," he whispered. "To stop anyone." Hayes's hand tightened on his gun. "Stop us from what?" The man swallowed rain shaking off his chin. "From going further." Hayes felt the forest around him grow colder. "Why?" The man hesitated. Then, voice barely audible, he breathed, "Because she didn't die there." Hayes's heart lurched. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. The man slowly lowered his hands, not in defiance, but as if his arms had finally given out. Officers raised their weapons instinctively. The man didn't resist. He just whispered, "You're searching the wrong place." Hayes stared at him, rain running down his face, every nerve braced. "Then where is she?" he asked. The man's lips trembled, his gaze drifting past Hayes toward the deeper, darker stretch of trees. "Further," he whispered. "Where the forest caves in, where the earth sinks. I tried to follow her, but I heard someone else. Someone shouting, someone angry. I didn't go closer." Hayes's breath caught. "There was a third person." The man nodded slowly. I never saw him, only heard him. She screamed again. Then it went quiet. Hayes felt his entire chest tighten. A third presence. The real killer. The one who dragged her away. The one whose voice matched the confessor's memory. The one still hiding in the woods. Lightning flashed overhead. The man flinched. Please, he whispered, don't make me go back there. Hayes stared into the forest, into the black, endless night swallowing the ridge. He knew what lay ahead. A deeper trail, a darker truth, a place where screams were swallowed whole. And for the first time since reopening the case, Hayes felt something he hadn't felt before. They weren't hunting a ghost. They were being led straight into someone else's territory. Someone who had waited nearly 30 years. Someone who knew these woods intimately. Someone who didn't want the truth uncovered. Hayes tightened his grip on his flashlight. The path ahead was opening, and whatever they found next would unravel everything Brookings thought it knew about the night Emily Carter vanished. The storm thickened around them, sheets of rain carving lines through the darkness as Detective Hayes steadied himself, eyes locked on the trembling man before him. The woods roared with wind, the treetops bending like giants bowing towards something unseen. Lightning flickered across the sky, revealing the raw fear etched into the stranger's face, fear so deep it seemed fossilized, decades old, unhealed. You're telling me, Hayes said, carefully, voice low, that Emily ran deeper into the woods? And someone else followed her. The man nodded once, sharply, as if afraid even the movement might summon something from the shadows. I heard him, he whispered, closer than I was, heavy steps, breaking branches, calling out to her. But not like someone who wanted to help. He was angry, furious. I'd never heard a voice like that. Hayes's pulse hammered through his ears. A third presence, not the confessor, not the man before him. Someone who had been out here long before either of them spoke up. Lyle stepped closer to Hayes and murmured, Detective, this guy? He's unstable. Could be mixing memory with paranoia. Hayes didn't respond, because deep down, something about the man's words rang true, not in the details, but in the tremor beneath them. This wasn't a performance. This wasn't some rehearsed story. This was trauma speaking fractured and jagged, trauma that had shaped a life spent hiding in the woods, afraid of a truth that refused to die. Hayes said quietly, What's your name? The man swallowed, eyes darting nervously around the forest as if he expected someone or something to emerge from behind any tree. Marcus, he whispered. Last name. Marcus shook his head. It doesn't matter. Not anymore. Hayes took a slow breath. Marcus, I need you to tell me where Emily went. You said she ran. You said you tried to follow. How far? Which direction? Marcus pointed with the trembling hand toward an even darker stretch of trees, the kind of darkness that looked unnatural, almost alive. Down there, he whispered. Where the ground sinks. There's a hollow, a place where sound doesn't come back. I never go near it. Hayes followed the direction with his flashlight. A dense slope dropped sharply into a basin of thick brush and twisted roots. Fog clung low to the ground like white breath exhaling from the forest floor. The deeper Hayes looked, the more a strange dread unfurled across his chest. Why didn't you tell anyone, he asked. Marcus's voice cracked. You don't understand. People like me. No one listens. No one believes. And he was out there. I heard him for days after. I thought he was looking for me too. Hayes's jaw tightened. Days, plural. Are you saying he stayed in the forest after that night? Hayes asked. Marcus nodded. He lived out here. Or hid out here. I don't know. But I heard him, even long after she was gone. Hayes exchanged a glance with Lyle, an unspoken alarm tightening between them. If Marcus was telling the truth, they weren't just chasing history, they were walking into territory marked by someone who used the woods as home. Someone who knew every hollow, every ridge, every blind spot. Hayes took a careful step forward. Marcus, did you ever see this person, even once? Marcus's lips trembled. No, only heard him. Always behind me, always close, sometimes whispering, sometimes shouting, sometimes humming. Hayes stiffened. Humming. Marcus nodded, eyes distant. A slow tune repeating over and over, like he was calming himself down. Lyle muttered under his breath, Jesus. Hayes tightened his grip on his flashlight and motioned toward the officers. We're moving down the ridge. Marcus jolted. No, don't go there. Not at night, not in this weather. Hayes turned to him. I don't have a choice. Marcus grabbed Hayes' arm with trembling fingers. You don't understand. The hollow isn't just a place. It's where things disappear. Animals won't go near it. The air feels wrong. It feels hungry. Hayes gently pulled his arm free. We're going. Marcus collapsed to his knees, hands over his face, rocking again. You shouldn't... He'll come back. He always comes back to the hollow. Hayes looked at his team. Weapons drawn, lights steady, nerves high. He took the first step down the slope. The ground sank beneath each footfall, mud slick and treacherous. Branches clawed at their clothes. The basin grew darker the deeper they descended. The trees looming like towering sentinels. The rain thickened, turning the earth into a cold slurry that sucked at their boots. With every step, Hayes felt the air change denser, colder, heavier. Like the forest was holding its breath, the sounds of the storm faded, muffled by dense canopy overhead. Even the wind seemed to die here, leaving only the rhythmic drip of rain sliding down massive trunks. This place is wrong, Lyle murmured, voice barely audible. Hayes didn't argue. He felt it too. The hollow wasn't just a place. It was a pressure, an old, unspoken weight that had settled over the years. And then he saw them. Bones. Not human, at least not these. Animal remains scattered across the forest floor. Small skeletons, some recent, some old, some half buried in mud. The way they were arranged felt unnatural. Not random. Not the normal cycle of the wild. More like something had dragged them into this basin. Something with a pattern. A rhythm. Lyle whispered harshly, Detective. I see it, Hayes said quietly. They moved deeper. Something glinted in the mud. Hayes knelt, brushing aside wet leaves. A button. Metal. Faded. With the same insignia worn by employees of the diner where Emily worked. Hayes's pulse kicked into high gear. Spread out, he ordered softly, eyes sharp. They moved carefully, flashlights, scanning the ground boots, sinking into the wet earth. Hayes pushed through a thicket of tangled twigs and nearly stumbled forward when the ground dipped sharply into a shallow ravine. And then, in the beam of his flashlight, he saw it. Fabric, more of it, draped over a fallen log like a ghost of a life cut short. Blue, striped, the same uniform. Hayes's voice dropped to a whisper. Lyle, get over here. Lyle joined him, breath-catching. Oh, God. Hayes moved closer. The fabric was stiff with age, torn down the side edges, frayed and brittle. Beneath it, half buried in soil, lay something else. Hayes dug gently with gloved hands. His stomach twisted. A shoe, small, women's size, faded and cracked, but unmistakably from the mid-90s. Then, beneath the shoe, a bone. Human. A femur, judging by the length. A fragment worn by time, yet undeniably human. Lyle's voice faltered. Detective, did we just find her? Hayes didn't answer. Not yet. He kept digging carefully, exposing another bone, a rib, a vertebra. Then 2 finger bones, still faintly curled. He sat back on his heels, rain sliding down his face. This wasn't just a scattering. This was a site, a grave. But not a proper one. Not a burial. More like a dumping ground, a place where the earth tried to reject what was left. Hayes felt a hollowness in his chest. Emily Carter had ended here. But something about the scene felt wrong. Why were the remains spread out? Why were some animal bones mixed with hers? Why were the fragments so scattered? Then Hayes noticed it. Large marks in the mud, deep grooves, claw-like, but not from an animal. It looked like something had dragged the remains multiple times, as if moving them around the hollow in slow, ritualistic patterns. Hayes whispered. Someone kept coming back. Someone disturbed the site over and over. Lyle's voice shook. Detective. Who would do something like this? Hayes stared into the black void of the forest. Someone who never left these woods. A crackling sound echoed behind them, a branch snapping. Hayes whipped around. Flashlights swung. The forest was empty, but Hayes knew deep instinctive primal that they were not alone in the hollow. Someone was out there, watching, waiting, breathing in the shadows of the trees. Someone who knew this place better than anyone alive. Someone who was very much still here. The hollow held its silence like a secret too old to break. But Detective Hayes felt something else lurking underneath, something alive, moving, calculating. The trees around them stood like tall, dark witnesses, their branches swaying with a low moan the wind alone couldn't create. Hayes tightened his grip on the flashlight beam, slicing through the dripping air, searching for the source of the snap that had come from somewhere behind them. Lyle whispered, Did you see anything? No, Hayes murmured back, but someone's here. One of the officers scanned the perimeter flashlight, trembling. Could be an animal. Hayes cut him off sharply. Animals don't follow footprints to a site like this. Animals don't watch from just out of sight. Another snap echoed this one sharper, closer, cracking like a dry bone under pressure. Marcus's trembling warning replayed in Hayes's mind. He'll come back. He always comes back to the hollow. A chill snaked down Hayes's spine. Stay tight, Hayes ordered. Weapons low but ready. The air felt different now, thick-charged, as if the forest itself was bracing for something inevitable. Hayes scanned the far tree line, the place where his instincts screamed the presence was hiding. But all he saw was darkness, layered in darker tones, rain slicking down enormous trunks like tears. He crouched beside the remains again, forcing himself to focus. Emily had been here. Her bones, her uniform, her final place. But this wasn't a resting ground, it was a dumping site, a feeding site, a trophy site. Hayes didn't know which possibility was worse. He lifted his flashlight toward a cluster of bones farther out. Bones scattered in strange arcs, almost in patterns. Human remains didn't scatter like this on their own. This was deliberate, ritualistic, obsessive. This isn't fresh, Hayes murmured, but it's not untouched either. Lyle swallowed nervously. You think he's been keeping her here all these years? Hayes didn't answer immediately. The truth felt too heavy to say out loud. Then he spoke softly, almost reluctantly. Yes, someone's been coming back, again and again. A long, shuddering breath escaped Lyle's chest. But why? What kind of person? Not conjecture right now, Hayes snapped gently. Eyes open. Work the scene. But Hayes knew the answer. Someone who was fixated. Someone who had wanted Emily to stay hidden. Someone who had learned the terrain intimately. He moved deeper into the site, scanning the ground. More bones, more torn fabric, more disturbances in the soil where something or someone had dug around recently. He knelt again and brushed aside wet leaves, revealing a patch of ground that seemed fresher than the rest. Someone's been here in the last couple days, Hayes said. Maybe last night. The officers tensed simultaneously. Detective, Lyle whispered. What if he's here because he knew we'd find this place? Hayes's jaw tightened. Then he's watching us right now. Another crackling sound. But this time it wasn't from behind them. It came from below. Hayes whipped his light downward. The earth beneath their feet trembled, not a quake, not weather, but something moving through the brush just beyond the basin hidden beneath layers of roots and mud. A low rustling, slow, heavy, deliberate. Hayes felt a primal warning curl in his gut. Spread out, he whispered. Cover the northern ridge. Before they could move, a voice echoed from the darkness. Not loud, not clear, but unmistakably human. A rasp, a mutter, a broken guttural sound that twisted through the trees like smoke. Hayes froze. Lyle's flashlight jerked violently. Did you hear that? Hayes didn't respond. He raised his light, scanning the ridge. A figure stepped between two trees. Just a silhouette at first. Thin, uneven, slightly hunched, almost twitching. The officers raised their weapons. Police Hayes shouted. Don't move. The figure didn't move, didn't raise hands, didn't react at all. It just stood there, shoulders subtly rising and falling, breath scraping through the rain. Hayes stepped forward cautiously. Show me your hands. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating the figure for a split second. It wasn't Marcus. It wasn't the confessor. It was someone else entirely. An older man. Gaunt hair, long and matted with rain eyes, sunken deep into shadowed sockets, pupils reflecting the flashlight beams with a feral gleam. His clothes were torn, filthy, hanging off his frame like shedding skin. His boots were heavy mud-caked, matching the fresh prints Hayes had followed down the slope. He had been here earlier. He had been here last night. He had been coming here for years. Hayes took a slow step forward. Sir, stay where you are, he ordered. Keep your hands visible. The man tilted his head slightly, too slowly, like a dog trying to recognize a distant whistle. Rain streamed down his face. His lips parted. A sound came out. A low hum. No melody, just a droning, rhythmic hum. The same humming Marcus mentioned. Hayes's blood iced. Stop that, Hayes demanded. Hands where I can see them. The humming grew louder. Not a tune, a mantra, a compulsion. Hayes's instincts screamed. He recognized obsession when he saw it. This wasn't just guilt or grief. This wasn't someone who stumbled upon a scene and panicked. This was someone who outlived their own humanity. The man took one step forward, then another. Hayes drew his weapon. Stop! The humming ceased abruptly. The man's head twitched again, eyes narrowing as if he finally understood who stood before him. His lips cracked open. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. Hayes steadied his aim. "Sir, I need you to stop walking and—" "You don't understand," the man rasped. "This place, this is where she stayed." Lightning flared again, catching his face in a stuttering flash. Madness, fear, possession, all fused into one hollow stare. The man continued, voice trembling with warped emotion. "I didn't take her. She came to me. She ran. She fell. She asked for help." Hayes narrowed his eyes. "She asked you." The man nodded violently. "She grabbed my arm. She begged me. She said he was coming. Said she heard him. Said he wouldn't stop." Hayes's breath caught. Another presence, another man. "How many people were out here that night?" Hayes demanded. The man looked past Hayes, scanning the trees with frantic motion. "Two," he whispered. "Two besides her. Two besides me. One who dropped her. One who chased her." The storm swallowed the next moment in a crash of thunder. Hayes stepped closer. "What did you do to her?" The man's expression collapsed into something almost pitiful. "I tried to help," he said. "I carried her. I held her. But she kept screaming. And then he came. He was furious. He dragged her away. I couldn't stop him." Hayes stared at him, rain soaking through his clothes. "How do you know she died?" Hayes asked quietly. The man's eyes shifted, unfocused, haunted. "I don't." Hayes froze. The officers stiffened. Lyle whispered, "Detective, what if she didn't die where we thought?" The man stepped backward, deeper into the shadows. "You shouldn't have come here," he repeated. "He doesn't like visitors." Hayes' stomach twisted. Who, he demanded. Who was the man chasing her? Thunder cracked. The man called back with a hollow, echoing voice. "He lives in the ridge. Always has, always will. He never left her." Then in the darkness behind the man, something moved. Hayes raised his weapon instantly. Another figure, a shadow, a shift the forest breathing. He couldn't tell. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't the end of the trail. It was the beginning of something darker. And the real killer was closer than any of them realized. For a moment, the storm seemed to suspend itself over the hollow, every raindrop hanging in the air as Detective Hayes stared into the darkness behind the gaunt man. The forest had grown unnaturally still, the wind choking back its breath. Hayes tightened his grip on his weapon, his pulse a metronome of adrenaline and dread. The figure before him trembled, but the shadow behind him, whatever had shifted, remained motionless. A presence without shape, yet unmistakably there. The man Marcus's, he lifted his chin slightly as if listening to something only he could hear. Hayes stepped forward, voice steady but low. "Who is in there with you?" The man's breathing became shallow, almost reverent. "He never stopped protecting her," he whispered. "Even when she was gone, even when I thought she'd disappeared into the trees. He stayed." Hayes exhaled slowly, rain streaking down his face. "You said he dragged her away. Why? Who was he to her?" The man didn't blink. He knew her. Hayes stiffened. "How?" The man's lips twitched as if the truth tasted bitter even after decades. He watched her, followed her, wanted her. She didn't know. She never knew. Hayes felt the forest tilt around him. What was his name? The man's voice cracked. "I don't know his name," he whispered. "I only know his breathing." Lightning flashed again, brief, violent, lighting the basin like a macabre stage. The bones at Hayes's feet gleamed pale and slick. The torn uniform cloth fluttered like a dead heart in the rain, and through the trees just beyond the ridge, Hayes caught a glimpse of fleeting shape, a darker shadow flickering between two trunks, then dissolving into the storm. "Eyes up," Hayes barked. Lyle and the officers whipped their flashlights toward the ridge. Nothing. Just layers of black shifting in the wind. The gaunt man stepped backward in fear, twisting his expression. "He doesn't want you here," he whispered. "He thinks you're going to take her." Hayes looked at him sharply. "There is no her left to take." The man's head jerked violently. "He doesn't believe that." Hayes's chest tightened. This wasn't just obsession. This wasn't just madness. This was devotion corrupted and dark. Someone had lived with Emily's memory in these woods for decades. Someone who believed she still belonged to him. Hayes motioned for Lyle to move left, the officers fanning out like careful hunters. The gaunt man's gaze followed them, panic rising. "You're making him angry," he whispered. "Tell him," Hayes snapped to show himself. "He doesn't come when called," the man said. "He comes when threatened." A crack of thunder tore across the sky, echoing so loudly, the ground vibrated beneath their feet. The storm finally broke open, releasing a torrent of rain that drenched the basin, thickening the mud, washing the bones in cold streams. Hayes took advantage of the noise and stepped closer to the gaunt man. What happened after he took her? The man swallowed hard, shoulders trembling. I followed, he whispered. For hours. For days. But the storm washed everything away, and when I found him again, he had nothing left. Hayes's heart stalled. What do you mean? He was sitting right there. The man pointed to a large half-rotted log near the hollow's edge, holding something small, rocking back and forth, whispering. He said she'd stopped breathing. Said she broke when she fell. Said he tried to carry her home. Hayes's chest grew heavy with a sickening understanding. So he killed her, Hayes asked. The man shook his head. He said the fall killed her. The fall from the diner. The first fall. He never blamed himself. Hayes felt the air tighten like a noose. The confessor, the accidental fall, the moment no one ever wanted to believe mattered. Then where did he take her, Hayes demanded. The man's voice trembled. He didn't bury her. He couldn't let her go. He kept her in the ridge, brought her flowers, talked to her, waited for her to wake up again. Hayes felt nausea rise up his throat. How long, he asked softly. The man's lips cracked into a hopeless grimace, long enough for her to become part of the forest. Hayes felt the world tilt sideways. This wasn't just a crime. This was obsession carved into decades, a tragedy stretched across years by two men tangled in guilt and delusion. But then, something else snapped through the forest. A voice, sharp and unexpected, echoing through the storm. A scream. Human, pained, terrified. Hayes spun toward the direction of the sound flashlight, slicing through trees like a blade. Lyle shouted, "Northridge, move." The officers sprinted, slipping across wet mud, grabbing branches for balance. Hayes ran with them, lungs burning, heart slamming against his ribs. The wind tore at their jackets. The rain blinded them, but the scream was unmistakable, repeating through the hollow like a twisted siren. It wasn't Marcus. It wasn't the gaunt man. It wasn't the officers. Hayes ran faster. At the ridge's edge, the ground dropped into a narrower ravine. The earth had eroded from years of storms, forming a steep, tangled chute that funneled down toward a dark pocket of forest that even daylight would struggle to penetrate. Hayes lifted his flashlight and froze. Someone was down there. Someone thrashing. Someone struggling. Not against an attacker, but against the ground itself. A figure in a jacket. Back turned. Boots slipping in mud. Arms flailing violently as if caught in something unseen. "Hey!" Lyle shouted. "Police, stop!" But the figure didn't stop. The figure didn't even seem to hear. They were trying to climb out of something, no trying to escape from it. Hayes slid down the slope boots, digging into the mud for traction. Rain hammered his face, cracking like hail against his cheeks. When he reached the bottom, the scene snapped into focus. The figure was tangled in a mass of roots. Arms pinned. Legs half submerged. Voice hoarse with panic. It was the confessor. Hayes lunged forward, grabbing their jacket and pulling them free, just as their feet slipped deeper into the sinkhole-like mud. "What the hell are you doing here?" Hayes demanded, voice sharp with disbelief. They gasped mud, streaking their face eyes wild with fear. "I ran, they choked. I heard someone outside the station. I thought he came for me." Hayes felt a jolt of dread punch him in the chest. Who did you think came for you? The man from that night?" they cried. "The one I heard in the woods. He was at the station. I heard him whispering through the door. I swear I did." Hayes grabbed their shoulders. "You left custody." "I panicked," they sobbed. I thought he'd kill me for talking." Hayes's flashlight flicked upward. The gaunt man stood at the top of the ridge, arms raised protectively, eyes wide with panic. "You shouldn't have brought them here," he screamed. "He's coming for all of you now." Lightning tore the sky apart. Every officer looked up. A third silhouette stood behind the gaunt man, taller, broader, still as stone. Hayes's pulse froze. This wasn't the confessor. This wasn't Marcus. This was the presence both men feared. The man who'd lived in the ridge. The man who chased Emily through the storm. The man who dragged her body away. The real killer. He stepped forward. Just one step. But it was enough. The forest shuddered with him. The storm bent around him. And his voice, low, guttural, monstrous in its quietness, rolled down the ridge like thunder. "You should have stayed away." Hayes lifted his weapon. Everything in the hollow snapped. The storm, the woods, the past, the present, all converged on that single moment. And Hayes understood. This wasn't a confrontation. This was a reckoning.